see what catches my eye and have a bit of a catch up. See what's been coming out from yesterday, probably news headlines, and we'll see what we find on the YouTube feed that is worth having a look at. Now, I've been following this, as has most of us, the goings-ons in the Middle East part of the globe.
5 words
And,
you pronounce wrong 2 years before your brain
as you must
starts
have heard,
shutting down.
These warrants have been issued. And that kind of thing, it's not too
What's
surprising.
on your radar, Brianna?
Well, Robbie, let's check in on how the American political establishment is reacting to news that the International Criminal Court is pursuing arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and 3 Hamas leaders for alleged war crimes. Voices as diverse as State Department spokesman Matt Miller, Senators John Fetterman, John Boozman, Tim Scott, and Joe Biden himself have all echoed the same talking point, that there should be no equivalence.
Now, I do tend to watch a lot of the American news networks and channels. Rising, sort of to the left, what I find is they have quite a balanced view some of the time, and it's nice to see the back and forth between Brianna and Robbie, as you'll notice.
Between Hamas, terrorists, and Israel.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas.
I understand fully he's in a very difficult position. Elections are coming up soon. He's straddling between 2 sides of his party. He's got the other side, the Republicans on the right, trying to find everything they can to move him on out and edge Trump on in. So he's in a pretty difficult situation. Obviously, he probably has his own points of view. Don't think we'll ever hear him air publicly unless it's a mic drop moment. So he does come out with some outrageous things, and well, this to
now
me
I
sounds
agree.
like one of
there
them.
should be no equivalence between Hamas terrorists and Israel. That's because Israel has killed exponentially more civilians, humanitarian aid workers, journalists, and children than Hamas, not just since October 7th, but during the decades leading up to that date. Over 35,000 Palestinian lives lost since October 7th, 3/4 of whom are women.
See, the thing is that kind of caught my attention is a week or so ago when there's this story about the Israeli and American some of the politicians on their end threatening to sanction and take the family members of anyone who has anything to do with the International Court, to basically punish them or threaten or bully them into not making a decision which should be based on facts and evidence, and they're showing up to do their job like anyone else going to work. So, I don't know, international politics.
1,200 Israeli lives lost, 764 of whom were civilians on the other. Moreover, while it has no legal or moral right to kill civilians, as a force representing an occupied population, Hamas does have a right to armed resistance. While as an occupier, Israel has humanitarian obligations to the people of Gaza, which it has failed to satisfy. To the extent that one side should balk at any equivalency being drawn, it's just not at all clear to me that it should be Israel. Despite protestations about false equivalences, the ICC does.
This is my favorite multi-tool kit so far. Whenever I need to unscrew anything, I can always find the right.
They often have a, fairly balanced point of view as well. I like to check out the channels that give you at least some facts, an opportunity of weighing things up yourself, which is the advantage of the internet. Although something you can't always rely on the media for.
Of the request and the equation. Also, the sharp reactions with the U.S. president, who brands as outrageous the accusations against Prime Minister Netanyahu and his defense chief Yoav Gallant.
From what I understand, he put it out well in advance of him actually going to the courts to seek the warrants, the said warrants, which some say will have little effect. When you look at it in the broader sense, it's symbolic, and I suppose it's to send a kind of message that, the world is seeing for themselves what's going on both sides of this terrible dispute and war. And if there are any, let's say, exaggerated intentions, they're going to be documented, at least by this legal body, the International Court.
Likes of the UK, Italy, and Germany, which, quote, bemoans the inaccurate impression of an equivalence between both sides. And then there's France, among those which
Israel will always have their supporters,
says it leaves the matter
so will the Palestinians,
to the independent view of the judges of the ICC, an international court with jurisdiction in 124 nations. The ICC has indicted sitting leaders before, see Vladimir Putin just a year ago, but
see where it gets tricky. If you support the international system of checks and balances and laws, and you back them to go against one particular person being charged or accused of, in this case, war crimes, you can't suddenly back down and have a go at them if they decide to go after somebody that's on your side of the fence. So it seems to me.
A democratically elected one. What impact on Israel's reputation, on its politics, and will these charges alleviate the suffering in Gaza? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking, will Benjamin Netanyahu be PM non grata? With us, he advised.
Let's go to the next part. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you to analyze some of this for us. We'll play first this clip of Matt Lee. He's the AP reporter, rock star guy, puts up with no BS in the State Department, just going back and forth, ruthless.
I think to an extent highlights what I was just saying. And I'm not sure if I've seen this clip yet. If you're going to back them on one occasion, be prepared to back them on another.
With the State Department spokesperson, here's what he had to say.
Who does have jurisdiction here?
So the government of Israel has jurisdiction.
Over the occupied territory. We have jurisdiction. Over Gaza, which is not entirely occupied.
They have jurisdiction into looking at the actions by their military personnel.
If they have...
No, I like this guy because he doesn't tend to just roll over, and obviously he's a mature guy. He's been at it for some time, so intimidation is something he probably knows how to navigate his way through. So he would actually hold fast, ask solid questions, and he's not afraid to push back if the answer doesn't make sense.
Complaint, they have to bring it to Israeli courts.
We have jurisdiction, and we have with the use of our equipment.
I'm sorry.
How do you have with the use of our military equipment
Matt,
that we have provided?
How do you have jurisdiction?
If you look at the Leahy law, if you look at
that's not jurisdiction in a criminal process. That's
not in a criminal process, but it has to do with the determinations that we make and the policies that flow from
that's
it.
Not jurisdiction.
But Matt, long term, you were right that we want to see.
You used to work for DOJ, Matt.
You were
on. There's no U.S. does not have jurisdiction.
There are different. I wasn't referring to criminal jurisdiction, Matt. There are different ways to look at this. Long term, we agree with you that the Palestinian people should be a state that has have the ability to make these determinations. But that's not where we are today.
This is where it gets kind of shaky. So, for the purpose of bringing forward these warrants, at least requesting them, they've had to, for the sake of argument, treat the Palestinians as though they are a group who has their own state, although they, in practice, do not have their own state, and they haven't signed up to the court in the same way the Americans or the Israelis haven't. Nonetheless, so they've theoretically considered them as being as having a state, and what the spokesman here is trying to argue gets very grey area, wishy-washy. So I'll let you decide for yourself.
That's where we're trying to get to.
Okay, what the hell is going on here? What is he saying?
Yeah, so the fundamental question he's asking there, he's like, okay, if you are a Palestinian and you feel like you've been the victim of a war crime or a crime against humanity,
okay,
who do you appeal to? Like, what is your venue that you can go to? Because Miller is saying, well, they can't go to the International Criminal Court, even though Palestine as a non-member kind of state at the UN is a signatory to the ICC, to the Rome Statute. They're saying because you're not an official state, you can't go through that venue. So Lee is asking, well, then who? Like, where can a Palestinian go? And Matt Miller's first answer was Israel. And you hear him like, wait, they have to go through Israel? Like, just, you live in Gaza and you're gonna like get a lawyer and you're gonna sue in an Israeli court?
I mean, this sort of makes sense. If you've got the small and more powerful countries around the world agreeing to a global system of law and order, then everyone should be able to appeal to that higher body if they have a case to bring forward. My humble opinion.
Like,
if you can get into Israel.
Like, they're not even gonna let you in. Like, what are you talking about? That's completely absurd. And then he says, well, we have jurisdiction. And I think Matt Miller probably realized he stepped in it immediately when he said that. And Matt Lee, wait, you have jurisdiction?
Yeah.
Like the United States? And there would be a world, because anybody can sue around the world in a U.S. court. That would be kind of funny if that's what Matt Miller meant, that, okay, you can sue the government of Israel through an American court. It's not what he meant, and also it's not criminal. He just means, well, if they commit some crimes, then we'll send fewer weapons, according to the Leahy law. Not that they're actually going to ever do that, but he's saying we could do that.
Right, so that's not jurisdiction. That's not jurisdiction. Over USA.
And so it ends with, nobody would really have criminal jurisdiction over Israel, according to the U.S. posture here. And that's actually what I picked up on in my exchange with him.
Well, let's get to that. So do you want to set up anything else?
Yeah, no.
Give us some background before we get to your exchange.
Yeah. So the point that Matt Miller and the State Department and President Biden, when he is able to kind of put together a coherent argument that they would make, is they'd say, well, look, Palestinians are not a state, and we believe that you can only have an ICC prosecution if one member state is involved. Now, neither Ukraine nor Russia are signed on to the Rome Statute.
Right.
We're totally fine with that. But people have pointed out that hypocrisy before. I looked back at the original.
That's another point. Global politics, local politics alike, plagued with a fair amount of hypocrisy that we can just about take for granted.
And so,
but getting them on
this
the
is all
record,
about
this
power.
is good.
But it's still good to.
But the more you get to that, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so with all of that lead up, let's actually take a listen to it.
So back on the question, jurisdiction.
No, this is the
international. You said that because the Palestinians are not a state actor, they don't have jurisdiction over their side. Back in 2014, I just Googled this one up. Jen Psaki was up here, your colleague. The statement was, today the ICC convicted Jermaine Katanga, the commander of the FRPI militia, for his responsibility for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The ICC's DRC cases represent a significant step toward delivering justice for victims in the DRC. She then went on to say the United States reiterates its call for the...
Something I heard that kind of upset me slightly. I mean, just say, didn't destroy my day, but it got under my skin. One of the broadcasters was mentioning, I think it was one of the broadcasters or somebody in this whole debate, that they were having a conversation with an American congressman, as far as I can recall. I'll have to, backtrack, and I'll bring up the clip if I can find it sometime. And they pretty much said, this ICC court is there to bring prosecutions against African nations, and I think they included China and Russia. It's not designed for the rest. Now, what kind of a global fair balanced system is that? Could be an isolated opinion, but it got me thinking.
Apprehension of Sylvester Mudakumora, another leader of an abusive rebel militia in the DRC, who is subject to an arrest warrant by the ICC. The Department of State continues to offer a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to his arrest. So, at least in 2014, it was the position of the administration that you could even put out a reward for the arrest of somebody that would then go to the ICC and would have jurisdiction. So why does it not that apply to the current context?
So we have supported the work of the ICC in previous cases. I can't speak to this case because I don't know the fundamentals of it. I don't know the jurisdictional questions. Ultimately, the main way that the ICC has jurisdiction is if one of the two state parties to a case is a signatory to the Rome Statute. It comes in.
Before we leave it completely,
is so indestructible.
I just want to give you a little blast of.
Welcome to Novara Live. I'm Michael Walker, and I'm joined by Helena, aka No Justice MTG. Welcome back to Novara Live. How you doing?
This channel.
I've had quite an interesting day today. So I'm off to Italy tomorrow, but every single possible thing that could possibly have made my day frustrating when getting prepared, all of that stuff's happened. So I'm just glad to be able to actually get down to something that's not stressing myself out with the stuff that is involved with when you go away.
Maybe I'm going to do a Piers Morgan on you and sort of interrupt every time you try and answer a question. It's going to be even worse than packing. I will try not to do that, don't worry.
It's nice to hear a perspective from those of us in the UK. So I do catch some of these UK content creators and independent news presenters. Actually, Piers Morgan's channel, now he's gone independent.
A requested arrest warrant on Netanyahu. The Iranian president died. You got the blood scandal. I mean, it was the biggest news day of the year. I was almost disappointed not to be here, but you were in safe hands. Coming up later tonight.
So let's get to the meat and bones of it.
And I've said to distinguished members on the Hill.
Try and catch it from the start. Catch it from
contrary
Biden
to allegations
you've
against
seen
Israel
this
made by
earlier.
the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that.
Very macabre, isn't it? We don't think that the ICC prosecuting this war criminal is a good idea. Woo! Whoop! Slay! Joe Biden! Yes! It's sort of it's very out of step. I mean, very similar actually to, when you had these sort of protests talking about genocide in Palestine, everyone just starts shouting 4 more years. But that seems.
So he's very much to the left. But at the same time, he can present a balanced perspective on these things.
Netanyahu and Gallant. For good measure, he also reaffirmed his rejection of the charges of genocide levelled against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Of course, these two institutions, the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. Now, in an example of hypocrisy that has now become painfully familiar, this is the complete opposite of how Biden responded last year when the ICC charged Vladimir Putin with war.
See, I wasn't really paying much attention to this when it first sort of came up, or the rumours were swirling around that there might be warrants requested. When I started to hear about the bullying and reaction of some of the American politicians, it just kind of caught my interest to see where they're going to go with this
crime. So then he welcomed it. Now he says it's completely outrageous.
Listen and learn.
So how has the White House justified their different approach in the cases of Russia and Israel? Well, it all comes down to the question of jurisdiction. In the case of Putin's arrest warrant, the US argued that while Russia wasn't a member of the ICC, Ukraine was, and therefore war crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine were within the jurisdiction of the court. The ICC argues the same situation applies in the case of Netanyahu's warrant, or the request for Netanyahu's warrant. Its prosecutor argues that while Israel, like Russia, is not a member state of the ICC, Palestine, like Ukraine, is. And therefore the court, just as in the Ukraine war, has jurisdiction over war crimes committed in Gaza. Now that sounds very sensible, it sounds very intuitive, but the Americans disagree. This was State Department spokesperson Matt Miller speaking yesterday.
We believe that there should be the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. And an independent Palestinian state would have the ability to join the Rome Statute and become a member of the International Criminal Court, as every state in the world has the right to do. But that is not what.
So where do they go in the meantime?
They are not SOL. I said, first of all, Israel has its own investigations. Second, we have accountability mechanisms here. We have processes that are ongoing to look at Israel's compliance with international humanitarian law. So there are places to look at these questions. It's just, in our view, fundamentally not a role of the ICC.
So according to the United States, Palestine is not a state and so can't be a member of the ICC. And therefore, if Palestinians want justice, they have to go via the courts of their occupiers, right? Them's the breaks.
Change lane. As he put it, them's are the breaks. And we put our feet on the gas again.
Disturbing video obtained by CNN appears to show music mogul Sean Diddy Combs beating his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura during a 2016 encounter.
Rap superstar Sean Diddy Combs. Combs has been embroiled in a lot of legal drama, as you know, specifically facing allegations of sexual assault. And now there is
This might sound strange. I feel for the guy in terms of the pain that might come down on him and his estate and the life he previously was living. He's a billionaire. He's not a guy who's not smart, so he's navigated his way through. Must be a lot to be who he is and land where he's landed, and consistently, do the building work involved in becoming the mogul. It'll be interesting to see how he gets over this particular amount, and watch the space.
this new video that's emerged of the rapper seen with his then girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. This is it, and we want to warn you, it's disturbing.
It's not a shocker that P. Diddy is doing stuff like this. It may be shocking that it's now visibly seen on surveillance video, but it's not shocking that P. Diddy is this person.
I want to declare right here over these digital airwaves of YouTube that the career of Sean P. Diddy Combs, as we know.
I mean, black YouTube, black Twitter, they've gone in on this story.
It's over. This shit is over. It's over in the worst possible way, one of the worst possible ways you can imagine.
I fucked up. I hit rock bottom.
Sean Diddy Combs issues an apology video for an alleged 2016 attack. In an Instagram video posted May 19th, the rapper addresses the newly released surveillance video that allegedly shows him assaulting his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in 2016.
All right, so there's been some crazy stuff going on with our boy P. Diddy. Let's talk about it.
Oh, yes. I'll shout out to this guy as well. Nate the lawyer. Very smart thinker. And he does a solid, informative YouTube show. Covers good stories.
Okay, so who is P. Diddy? Well, P. Diddy is a rap superstar. He was born as Sean John Combs in 1969, opened up his own music label called Bad Boy Records in 1993. Diddy is also a brand ambassador for Ciroc, co-founder of the Revolt Network, and last but not least, in 2022, he became a member of the $1 Billion Club. Now, on November 16th, 2023, a woman named Cassie Ventura filed this lawsuit against Diddy.
The singer Cassandra Ventura, known as Cassie, today filing suit against ex-boyfriend Sean Combs. In the lawsuit, Ventura accuses Combs of raping her in her own home after she tried to leave him, of punching, beating, kicking, and stomping on her, and of blowing up a man's car after Combs learned he was romantically interested in Ventura.
According to the complaint, Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye, which, according to the lawsuit, prompted Ventura to try and leave the hotel room. As she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. The complaint goes on to say he grabbed her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her.
Now, to be clear, Cassie was actually...
Okay, I don't want to get totally stuck on the Palestine-Israel stories at the moment. There's just so many sides to this. And I just have to, from time to time, check in and particularly on the stories that affect us over here, see what they're arguing about.
Moment too soon. The levels of anti-Jewish race hate attacks are through the roof and utterly unprecedented. We have
what many have been arguing for quite a while now is these protests. Now, are you for freedom of speech? You're not for freedom of speech. You're for freedom of speech when you're arguing your corner, or you support the people who are protesting. And in the UK and the West, most of the West, we're supposed to have the right to protest, peacefully at least. Or are you not for being able to make a point if something is really, affecting you in a way that you want to impact on it by taking to the streets and protesting or showing your activism some other kind of way. Bottom line is this debate about shutting down the protests, I mean, I kind of liken it to the fact that it's connected to a bigger thing that we all know is happening in the Middle East, Israel and Palestinian war. Some would describe it in another way. And I think the protesters generally want this thing to come to a close one way or another, and that's what they're marching and protesting for. The argument kind of goes in other directions, and it can be seen as a freedom of speech question.
Marches all over the place continuing. It's not just something that causes Jewish Londoners to want to avoid going into town. It also deeply affects anybody who wants to go into.
Yeah, nobody should feel like they can't have the freedom to, walk where they want to walk to, or travel where they like to travel. On the other hand, we live in a country where you have the freedom to protest.
Town, and of course the residents who live in those areas. So this is very welcome indeed.
Do you think the police are doing enough in this field, Mark?
I believe when this conflict comes to a close, the protests will come to a close. I'm not trying to be too simplistic about it, but that's my bottom line.
I think the police are between a rock and a hard place. It seems to me that if you declare your disruption of public life a protest, look at me, I'm mounting a protest. I'm allowed to disturb the peace. I'm allowed to block people going about their daily life. As long as I call it a protest, it's fine.
The thing is, though, this is the exchange. We have the freedom to protest, the right to march peacefully and air our views in small or large groups. And the trade-off is, it causes a certain amount of disruption. You could fall on any side of this. You could be the protester, you could be the one being inconvenienced, but we live in a country where we have this freedom, and I guess it's a kind of give and take. Easier said than experience. I will throw that in.
We can't go on like this.
Can you explain to listeners why is it so offensive, the river to the sea chant?
The river to the sea chant does not come in isolation. There's also globalize the Intifada, and the Intifada basically means the resistance against Israel. At the front of the demonstration, there are banners calling for a victory to the resistance. And Hamas literally is the Islamic resistance movement. There is no doubt from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. It's a call for the destruction of Israel. If they wanted peace, they would call for peace. These demonstrations have never, ever called for peace. Never. They could say from the river to the sea, peace for Israelis. And
I mean, the thing that I find kind of difficult, and probably it could be a hard thing to argue, is if you're protesting against something, the top of your list is going to be the thing that you think is of most importance, and the thing you want to get across, more than other things that are just as relevant, but they fall slightly further down the list. I've heard the argument being, okay, you're taking up for this cause. Why didn't you take up for something else that happened previously, or this war that happened, or those people that were being treated in the same way? I don't think people are gonna, protest with a list of 1 trillion things that they're trying to emphasize. It's gonna be, this is at the top of the list, this is the main subject, this is the cause, and they're gonna push that idea. And I suppose within this frame of freedom to protest, another group who has a different priority, matter that they want to push to the front can equally do a similar thing, gather together en masse and go out and push that point. So it's like a coffee drinker who is a lover of fine coffees telling somebody who's a tea drinker and lover of a variety of teas that you should, promote and indulge in the thing that they like. It's just people have different causes, and they're going to support the thing that at that time they think they need to put a voice to. So when you hear this thing being argued, and I get it, human nature, we all interpret these things from our own perspective. So critics of one side is going to say, well, why didn't they approach it in this way, or say this, or present themselves in that way? That's the difference. That's the variety that makes the mix in everyday life. So culture and society, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
Peace for Palestinians, peace for you, peace for me. They're not interested in it. Their entire motivation is the destruction of the state of Israel. There are Palestinian leaders of these movements who, of course, they have every right to campaign on behalf of Palestine, as does anybody. But for the far left organizations that are involved in this, their sole goal is the destruction of the state of Israel as part of their wider war against the West.
As we speak, lastly, there are demonstrations, protests taking place on campuses up and down the country, literally the whole of the United Kingdom. What would you say to those students?
That's growing.
I think ultimately, do you know what? It's just a few numpties who want to have this fantasy role play that they're revolutionaries. The rest of the students can't be bothered with it. It completely gets in their way. It's causing things like the graduation ceremonies to be cancelled or to be moved from where they would usually occur. I think these kids need to grow up.
Now, these guys, they are not my favourites. Although, I would say they, I watch a few of their shows. Very rarely.
Like many people of my generation, like many people in America.
I used to actually be a fan of James Well back in the day. I think it was the 90s when he had his TV one-man show.
America, we're against the ongoing Israeli campaign that's brutally murdering Palestinians, that many historians and scholars of the Holocaust have called a genocide. And we're against the American support for that genocide. Without American support, it couldn't continue. So many students are standing up for what they believe is the correct moral position.
And what do you think the difference? What difference do you think you're making 6,000 miles away, protesting at a university campus? Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is taking notice of you?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu has all but instructed Joe Biden to crack down on these protests. And the reason is because Israel wouldn't be able to operate.
See, I just think where some of these protests can be criticized to say, well, what effect is it going to have? What's the point? I think at least it serves to demonstrate some kind of balance. There's two sides to this. One group supports that, another group supports that, and that in some way is balance. Or it will just be one way or the highway.
Without the billions and billions of dollars that it gets from America, to say nothing of the political and diplomatic support. If that ends, then Israel will be forced to behave like a normal country.
Yeah, but hold on, you've said it's a genocide.
No,
I mean, they've worked out, because the figures, the 35,000 that's not been reported on the mainstream news is a total load of bunkum. Even Hamas have had to had to wind back on that.
But
the innocent civilian hostages are the lowest in modern urban
not really news
warfare history. So how can you call it a genocide?
I just want to briefly touch on
they are. The poorest man on this planet is always going to consider himself richer than you.
Little Helper 95 donated $200. Andrew is the perfect example of modern Christians, cherry-picking what he follows of God's word based on his own opinions. Treats everyone he disagrees with awful.
See, this is the dating arena, and I used to check out Fresh and Fit quite a bit when they first started, and yep, they do run these shows with a certain format, and you can kind of see what their main demographic might be. You know, young men and men seeking guidance, and even mature older guys like myself will have a point of view. I think sometimes they do get into interesting debates. It's not really reinventing the wheel. It does give you a perspective on the Gen Zs, the millennials, and what changes and what never changes when it comes to male and female interactions. So I watch this sometimes.
Berates, belittles, insults.
I haven't belittled anybody. In fact, we've just been arguing our various points. There's no belittlement. Right now, we're engaged in what's called an argument. Yeah. So I'm explaining to you that the poorest man on planet Earth who has a virtuous wife who is loyal to him is always going to consider himself richer than any amount of money that you give yourself based on the fact that you let other men bone your chick. You understand that, right?
Yeah, but again, you're saying poorer, but again, if I'm making money and we enjoy it, what is the problem? I don't care what anyone thinks. I'll get death threats on the daily.
I like it when they have some English participants on the panel. It really, because the American perspective is, there's a relationship between us and them. They're a little bit bigger, harder, more upfront with everything. But when you get that UK blend mixed in with them, it changed the tone of the discussion.
Yeah, right. So, I mean,
can do.
If you don't care about virtue, if you are a slave to your own sin, your own vice, then you're in what's called pre-lust. And the thing is that shaking you out of pre-lust is next to impossible. You have now told me multiple times the thing which you value in life, the only thing which you value, is money.
Yes.
God's not going to feed you. He's not going
I'm not that biblically versed at this point in time, though I would say the mix that I often hear between dating and Christianity and feminism and the male perspective, it's food for thought.
He's not going to take care of you. Though there's almost every other thing on planet Earth you could do to make money. You took the easy path to make money, and you shared the one thing that men never share, which is their woman, in order to do it. That's why all men everywhere will always consider you lesser than they are. Than they are, yeah.
Are you married?
Yeah.
Was your wife a virgin when you met her?
No,
so she's probably been shagged by a lot of dudes. So what's the difference?
No, she hasn't been shagged by a lot of dudes.
How many dudes has she shagged before you?
Well, we have 5 kids, and the thing is that she shagged less people than she has kids. Yeah. And on top of that, let me ask you a question. If every single person that your chick slept with got her pregnant, how many kids would you have?
You do realise most women lie about the body counts, so that your wife probably has banged quite a few more people than what?
No, she hasn't. So but again,
you don't know that.
Here's the question. The question is, how many kids would you have if every time you banged a new dude you got pregnant? How many kids would you have?
We wear rubbers, so that we wouldn't.
Yeah, I know. That's not. You understand what a hypothetical is? If it were true that. So if it were true that every time you slept with a dude you got pregnant, how many kids would you have?
I ask myself.
I thought we don't keep count.
Are they often just trying to?
So what? I mean, would that studio be a nursery right now? Would it require
Does that matter,
5 or 6 full-time care workers to take care of all the kids that were in there? Is that how many kids you would have?
How's this relevant, may I ask?
What's that?
How's this relevant? You're going on about nursery kids.
Well, it is relevant.
Imaginary babies.
You're trying to make an accusation that somehow, because my wife was not a virgin when I married her,
and you're
that's
some big Christian.
equatable to me allowing other men to fuck my wife. And clearly it's not. It clearly there's a distinction in virtue.
Yeah, but your wife's been fucked. So okay, again, without being crude, I do have respect for you, but your wife has been fucked before you. So why does it matter?
YouTube.
Yeah, so what?
Well, he's still present.
So what with me? So what? She sleeps with other men.
Do I go and let other men fuck my wife on purpose? No. You do that.
You might get it up, mate.
Other men, you let other men stick their junk.
Right. Okay, let's leave that alone. I'm gonna wrap up with a little bit of the
Sorry,
king
go
of
ahead,
controversy.
No, I said I would love to get married, and I think it's awesome. But I gave this example, and then you can answer when I give this. Just tell me what you think about it. I said,
Pearl,
if I marry you, I said this to the young lady. If I marry you,
who has a UK panel
your
show,
dress would change, the car you drive would change. These things would all.
And although some of his views may be hard to listen to for anybody who's probably isn't much of a logical thinker, he has some very strong factual points
to
put across
better
in a clear way.
The way you eat would be better. But what would I gain for being with you?
What's good, everybody? It's your boy, O'Shea Duke Jackson.
All right, speed this up. I just want to hear some of the debate, if there is one.
He had to go out and fight. He had to make sure that money was in the house. He had to make sure that food was in the house. He had to make sure that these things happened. So even when he took on a woman, and I was talking to a woman, and I wonder how you feel about this. I said, a man of means today, I honestly don't think marriage is beneficial to a man of means today. And I explained it this way, and you tell me what your thoughts are. I said, I would love to get married. Sorry, go ahead. What? Well, no, I said I would love to get married, and I think it's awesome. But I gave this example, and then you can answer when I give this. Just tell me what you think about it. I said, if I marry you, I said this to the young lady, if I marry you, your dress would change, the car you drive would change. These things would all get better. The way you eat would be better. But what would I gain for being with you? I said, you would now ask me, the man who, if I was stayed single, I can sleep with all the fine chicks I'd like. Now that I'm with you, you're now telling me I can only sleep with you. So the sacrifice I'm making is to make everything in your life better. But the one thing I really enjoy, which is...
Right now, I'm doing everything on CornerSpeak, the main channel. At some point, I'll be splitting things up because we have CornerSpeak CBC for the music side of things. We have the News and Views channel where I'll be holding debates and discussions with David Williams, breaking down democracy and talking about some of the issues we experience here with our UK system and how it relates to the supposed global system of democracy. And I will also be doing some one-to-ones coming back on the music side of things. I'll be doing a DJ series from the analog era with the OG guys, the veterans, and some of the younger this era DJs from the digital arena, and just seeing how things have evolved from one period to another. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of nuggets and knowledge to be shared from a creative musical point of view. So a lot more to come on the CornerSpeak channel, and at some point on the other CornerSpeak YouTube channels. For now, we're going to wrap up.
Strange women.
Hearing what Tommy has to
I have to cut this out just to be with you. And what will you bring me? Well, you're not going to cook. You're going to want somebody else to cook. You're not going to clean a 10-bedroom house. You're not going to want to clean that.
Okay, I guess he's referring to the modern day woman and the modern day man, and what the trade-off is exactly what each party brings to the table, or should we say what one party wants from another, and then what they're willing to exchange, which is the same as what I said previously.
If I got the funds to be able to do it, you're going to want to let somebody else to clean it. So your life, again, is going to be made easier. And the prospect of, if I upset you, you can leave and take half of what I work for. And all I'm gaining is what? Most women cannot explain to me what I'm gaining in a marriage. And they say, oh, the security and comfort of having a good wife. And I'm like, most women cheat. So what would I gain? What is your thoughts on my excuse of why I think marriage isn't good for men today, especially a man of means? Because I honestly think marriage is for broke people. But what do you think about marriage today, especially a man with means?
Yeah, this used to trigger me a bit, to be honest, when I first heard it, until I started thinking, I listened to the men, right? And really, it's like, when you compare the women of 100 years ago, right? You know, they brought purity to the table.
See, this was what I was referring to when I said some things don't change. Doesn't matter whether you're going back to the beginnings or you're talking about 2024. There's some aspects of how males and females interact in society, in the culture, that just won't be changing much over time. And
they usually would have their own recipes that they like. You know, there's just something about, you can order food, but there's just something about a woman that knows how to make like cookies from scratch, cake from scratch. Like, do you really, it's kind of sad today when you think about like holidays and stuff, what you're going to order takeout for holidays. Like, it's just, you know, or what? And it's like women used to bring that stuff to the table. And, you know, it's like in 2023, honestly, men really don't get a lot out of marriage today. And, you know, they'll all say I'm a grifter and I'm a panderer or whatever. But it's just like, if you look at it from the men's point of view, the worst part actually is they can lose their most valuable asset. And it's not even money, it's their children.
Ooh.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's not like, what's more important than your kids?
But men have accepted that over the years, that's idea of when I get a divorce.
Now, he also mentioned a situation where a lot of women today don't want to cook. I want to play a clip from Shira 7, who she's telling ladies, this is the same lady who goes out and tells women
to
go out and get a man to invest in them, but that you should never do any domestic work. Let's play that clip.
Apart from being a provider,
thank you so much for spending some time with me this, I won't say evening because it's the morning, it's the early hours, and I'll be back probably tomorrow in the twilight hours to browse the net, cover the previous night's stories, and round up on some of the channels that I like to see that come up in my feed. So you being here with CornerSpeak, be good, be safe, be creative. We out.